special episode of Beyond the Page. I'm your host, as always, Phil Brown, and delighted to be joined with the excellent Mike Parrott, of course, from Utd Muppiteirs. Really pleased to have Mike on today. I wanted to do this for a while, so it's great to have him here. First of all, Mike, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Had a good day outside of everything Man United based today, but it's great to be on here. Watched quite a bit and obviously followed you for a while. So yeah, it's good.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Feelings mutual. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. Obviously, we've done stuff with James, so it's good to have you on for the first time. Hopefully, first time of many.
Yeah.
If you haven't checked out this guy's podcast, Utd Muppiteirs, I sincerely suggest you do. There's tons of other content on there. They do YouTube stuff as well. So I'll tweet out a link where you can follow Mike and follow their podcast, which is really well worth looking at and listening to. Some excellent stuff on their YouTube channel. So, Mike, I don't even know where to start. And I must admit, after the Brighton game, naturally disappointed with what we saw. And then I was hit by something that felt like it couldn't get any worse. When I saw the Marco Arnautovic news, and we've been here before. United have lost opening games this season before, which has been disappointing. We've had underwhelming signings in the past, which has been disappointing. But never in my life did I think that Manchester United would target an unapologetic racist and sexist who, quite frankly, has no business being near any football club with a moral compass. And it is just a new low for me. And honestly, it's making me question a lot of things, and I don't know how legitimate these emotions are, but it's despicable to me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I didn't know about them until yesterday, obviously, when I think it was David Amayal, or however you say it. I can't. Sorry if I butchered his name there, but when he started saying about it, all about the racist comments he's made at FC20 years ago, and then some of the other comments he's made, the sexist comments about when he was at West Ham with the women's team, and then I think he made comments at the Euros last year, like some anti-Albania comments or something. So it is absolutely baffling that we've been linked with someone of his ilk, regardless of footballing ability. Like, you'd assume United would be better than that, but just horrible. And hopefully we are going to stay away from that, even though there's been reports saying otherwise. But
well, it's definitely true. You know, I spoke to United about it yesterday. And I don't know, maybe I've cost myself my relationship with Manchester United due to some of the things that I said to people yesterday at the football club and some of the things I've subsequently said on Twitter, which I know they'll be livid about, and I don't care. What I can't square, circle I can't square, is a football club that takes the knee. Is that performative? And then targets a known racist. If you said what Marco Arnautovic said in Man United Stadium, you get suspended. So why is it okay for a player to do that but not a fan?
It's stupid, isn't it? Like, I don't think it's hard to just comprehend and put into a lot of words to try and. It's just stupid, isn't it? Like, again, it's so hard to actually say and add more explanation rather than if we bought someone like him, it would be horrible. We got rid of a manager decades ago for being a racist, and that was nearly 40 years ago now. So,
Mike, yeah. Remember what we did with Luis Suarez?
Yeah.
Bread and soap. So if you need to go through with the signing like this, what does it say to Fred? What does it say to Malacia? What does it say to Marcus Rashford? What does it say to the women's team? What does it say to fans of different ethnicities in the stadium? Go woke, go broke?
It just says morals aren't a thing, and all we care about is not even great football talent. Like, we're being honest as well as Marco Arnautovic. It's not some Ballon d'Or winning player. We're talking about a player they want as a third option at striker. Like, regardless of that, it's just.
You know what's even more unpalatable about this to me? What he did at 20 happened under Ten Hag and happened under Steve McLaren. So they know about this. Now, Scott Patterson, brilliant guy from Republic of Manchuria, tweeted the video that showed the allegation that was made against Arnautovic, which is despicable to hear. United are well aware of his issues, which all would have taken as a simple Google search. So clearly they've said, we don't care that he's a racist. We don't care that he's a sexist because at the end of the day, once morals have a material cost, then we compromise them because everything else is performative nonsense, right? And so what I want to know from Manchester United sponsors, are you happy with your brand being blazed across the chest of a flagrant racist and sexist? I'd like to know that.
I mean, they were probably just hoping that no one would know or remember, really. And you might have got away with this 20 years ago or something where social media wasn't around, and obviously it's just gone rampant, but it's just horrible, isn't it? The fact that we have been linked with him, with just everything that's happened over the past, 12 years now, that regarding Arnautovic's terrible, terrible behaviour. It's disgusting that we've been linked with him in the slightest. And the talk of, well, we did actually put in a bid and it was rejected, and then there's been talk today maybe a second bid. It's just terrible, isn't it? So, well, Christ, I really hope not.
I mean, you here the thing is, I'm trying to understand where the disconnect is. So the kindest interpretation I can have is that it was an honest mistake, which is an awful indictment once again on Manchester United's recruitment and an awful indictment once again on the people inside the football club. So we're trying to take Richard Arnold's word of future competence, future and immediate competence. You know, he was quite subtle but direct in blaming Ed Woodward for a lot of Manchester United's past problems, right? In that meeting that he didn't know but did know he was being recorded, in my opinion. And I'm sitting there and going, where's the changes, the real change that we were told to expect? So if you take out Lisandro Martinez, the signings that Manchester United made, I could see at Southampton. No, Malacia, good young player. No, Christian Eriksen was United at Brentford, good player that he is. Marco Arnautovic and Adrian Rabiot. What?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? I think, James brought it up earlier on the Muppeteirs main Twitter account of he retweeted someone, I think it might have been James Robson or something, saying that back in June that John Murto and everyone was taking more time looking at targets and like doing better background checks and stuff. And then you see obviously the Arnautovic link, and then obviously Rabiot is nowhere near on that level in terms of being bad or anything, but obviously he's always been a bit of a problematic dressing room player as well as everything with his mother, who's his agent and whatnot. So it's just, I don't understand what's happened because, as you were saying, even if we take out the two players we've been linked with over this weekend, I don't think it's been anywhere near as good as a window it should have been. I like the Christian Eriksen deal, but it would be good if that was like, let's say we still lost the first match. It'd be great if we were linked with someone like Eriksen now, where he's a little good player to add if we needed a bit more of a filler, but he shouldn't be a key vital signing. And then Malacia was a rotation player who obviously there's hope in the future that he could be a starting left back for us, but all he is right now is potential and good rotation. And then Martinez is a good starter, but that's one proper starter. Yeah. It's just a shame, isn't it? Especially with how bad we were last year, how dire we've needed some of these players, especially midfield. And
squad that's lost 8 players this summer, mate. 8 players, right? We've signed 3 squad players and a starter, right? Or sorry, 2 squad players and a starter, right? So Arnautovic, another squad player. And look, I understand people saying, well, what about Ronaldo? You didn't go after him. It's a fair point. But if your criticism is my moral consistency, that's fine. But that has nothing to do with the fact that Marco Arnautovic is a flagrant racist, sexist, that shouldn't be anywhere at a football club. That's a separate issue. You can come after me and say you're morally inconsistent. You should have been outraged there. It's a fair point. So attack me. But don't attack the fact that Marco Arnautovic should not be in a Manchester United shirt. And it is not commensurate with any football club that espouses progressive values, and nor should they be allowed to ever again, nor should they take a knee. I wonder how unifying that is in the dressing room for other players. I wonder how palatable that is. Quite frankly, if I was black in that dressing room, I'd want to leave right now. if that's the football club, if that's where we've gone to, where, hey, like, you know what, morals cost money, so we're just going to compromise them here, right? I mean, I don't expect United to have morals, right? I mean, they've done business with the Saudis, you know, they were over in Jeddah and stuff, doing deals, no problems. So they would take money, they would take money off any despot if they could get away with it. Let's be honest, right? We saw United show their moral hand with the Super League, and they've done it many, many times, that the pursuit of pure profit exceeds every other metric, right? Everything is a casualty to that. And we've seen the consequence of that, which United are now in a situation where they can no longer afford to run the football club as an ATM, but also compete with the billionaires. They just don't have the money anymore, right? And that's evident by this. If you've got money and you're serious about winning trophies, you don't target Adrian Rabiot and Marco Nautic. These are signings that if someone else made them, I'd laugh.
Yeah, I saw a tweet earlier today where someone said if there was a team being linked with Arnautovic and Adrian Rabiot, would be someone like Hellas Verona or something.
Yeah,
not
exactly.
Someone like us. And it is just, it's been terrible for years now. Obviously, like, even just taking out the rhetoric that it has been terrible post-Fergie, the past, including this summer, what big signing have we done in the last 3 or 4 summers? Like Sancho. Outside of that, it's been very, very quiet. Like, obviously, the summer 2 years ago, after the pandemic, was very, very, very little. And you could even give them the excuse of, well, it was COVID. And even though United are a ridiculously rich club, we did keep paying the staff and all of that. But there's no excuse anymore. We didn't spend a load last summer. It was like, what, 100 million, 110 million, I think, because it was Varane, Sancho, and Ronaldo. So let's say 110. And then how much have we spent this summer? Like 70? No, not even that.
Well, not even that, because you take out Andres Pereira and the other, and by the way, there's going to be other players that we sold.
I wasn't even including sales though, just actual, just straight up.
It's paltry. Do you know what's interesting about this, Mike? It's almost 2020 deja vu. So if you go back to that summer, Solskjaer wanted a left-footed centre back. He wanted a defensive midfielder. They were looked at Thiago, remember? He wanted a winger. Right? These are all the same targets that they had, and of course they wanted Sancho. So they chased Sancho all summer. Then they panicked 2 weeks. They went left, and they go out and sign Palestra, and they go out and sign Ahmad, and they go out and sign these left field players because now they've freed up the money from the Sancho deal, and they try to spread it around forth. This is exactly what they just did. Look at how disastrous that summer was. Right, the year they signed Van de Beek, it was a disaster. So here we are again in exactly the same situation, right? Needing a striker. I mean, I hear they needed a striker with his back to goal. Ralph Rangnick told them that they couldn't let Cavani go in January because he was the only player that had that could play with his back to goal. Yeah. None of the things that United are struggling with are new. They knew about all of these things. But see, the problem is they're trying to give the illusion that they're in for these big players and they're serious about them, but don't have the money. And I almost feel like the logjam with De Jong suits Manchester United because they want to give the illusion that they're desperate to sign this player and they're going to sign this player and they're not moving on the alternatives. This Frankie De Jong situation should have been. The United should have took control this a month ago and said, look, respect the fact you've got an issue with Barcelona. Respect the fact that it maybe is it's at an impasse. We can't wait to the end of August to find out that you couldn't resolve this issue. At some point, you have to take control of the situation and say, look, Frankie, we're going to force you and Barcelona into a corner and say, fix this situation or we move on. But we're not going to be here to rescue Barcelona or Frankie de Jong as the third option. Because all United are being used for, in my opinion, is a negotiating tactic between de Jong and Barcelona.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a worry for years now, hasn't it? That just our managers, they get hell-bent on one option and then it's them or bust. And you don't see that at the other big clubs. Like, Jurgen Klopp never wanted Mo Salah in the first place. He wanted, I don't remember what his name is now. And then, obviously, City didn't want Rodri as their first option at defensive midfielder. They wanted Fred, they wanted Jorginho, they wanted a couple other people, but they ended up with Rodri. And I think any United fan would take him in a second right now. So it is scary because obviously we saw it last summer with Declan Rice where Solskjaer was hell-bent on him. We didn't get him. We then don't have a defensive midfielder. Happened the year prior with Sancho that we didn't get another backup option. It's happening every year now where we don't have a second or third choice, or just God help me, it's not. I dream Javier wasn't the second option for that, because my God, there's just so many out there as well. And I was speaking about it with my friends earlier, and it was just like there's so many good midfielders, like not world-class midfielders or anything like that, but good ones like Julian Weigl, for example, or even Ismail Benacer or Fabian Ruiz. I know he's probably going to PSG now, but if they had these options semi-set up a couple months ago, then you'd know, and then you'd sort it out, rather than being where we are now with, how long, like 3 weeks of the window left? Already in the Premier League again. The season's already underway, and we're like, right, who can we get? Who can we get? And it's just pathetic, isn't it? Like,
see, this is a good point, right? Because I thought about this earlier. I'm like, if there was no deadline, right, what would force United to buy a player? Because it certainly got nothing to do with the start of football, right? I mean, they'd still be sitting there telling Ten Hag 9 months from now, we're still trying to get you that Frankie signing. Sorry, you just got sacked there because your team shit, right? But we're still trying to get him. I mean, what is it that what is your target here? Is it the end of the window or the start of the season? Because the start of the season should be your target for recruitment, not the end of the window, right?
I mean, we hear it every year, don't we? It's always before pre-season starts, isn't it? And then that doesn't happen. So then they give it a couple more weeks, and then they're like, okay, well, when they've come off the tour, the overseas tour, hopefully he'll be there by then. And then it moves to the start of the season. And then after that, it's deadline day. Like, it just happens every year, doesn't it? It's what they've always said.
Well, Mike, one thing we should be clear about is it should be clear now that Ed Woodward, as much as we'd love to vilify him, wasn't the problem.
Yeah.
Because who do we blame it on now? Because I don't see anything different today. If Ed Woodward was there right now, Ed Woodward would be getting the blame of this.
Yeah.
I don't see anything different today than what I've seen before. In fact, if anything, I'm seeing a continued decline, because this summer could end up being worse than the vast majority of the other. Look, I got two objections, right? I've got objection to just the sheer incompetence that infests that football club in every single capacity. They can't get out of their own way. And then I've got a problem with the profile of the player. What Eric Ten Hag spoke about, the right players. Tell me how the fuck Marco Arnautovic is the right player. I'm sorry, I'm angry about it, Mike, because I just, of all the things I never thought Manchester United would openly do, I'd rather play with 10 men than sign that guy and have that guy in a Manchester United shirt. I mean, I think it is such a disgraceful insult to the people of different ethnicities inside that stadium and inside that football club and the history of this football club. It's such a betrayal.
It's just terrible. Everything is. And yeah, you don't even know who to blame anymore now, because we finally got the director of football and technical director and all these people, and nothing has completely changed from what it was 3 or 4 years ago. It's so reminiscent to the 2020 window, but also the 2018 window, which was Jose's last one. But you had excuses back then to an extent of, oh, we weren't fully backing Mourinho, or excuse me, the 2021 of the pandemic. What's the excuse now? We normally spend a lot more money when, firstly, we don't make Champions League. We've normally spent a lot more, like in Van Gaal's first season, in Mourinho's first season, we spent a crap load. And then we've got a new manager where it's the same thing as well. And for some reason, we're just not spending that money. And it's just baffling, because it's such a worry, because who's out there?
You know, the thing is, I would rather Manchester United sat on August 31st and said, we tried to get other strikers, we couldn't get the ones we wanted, we're going to wait. Or did you want us to send Marco Arnautovic? No, you know what? I'd rather wait.
Yeah.
You know what? There's got to be someone better in the youth team than this. There's got Charlie McNeil, anyone. I don't care. Right? I play with 10 men. I don't care. But for the thing is, once you do this, you can never. I mean, it's going to be ridiculous if you start taking a knee before a game. I mean, come on, right? And if it was anyone else, I'd eviscerate them for it too, because this is what when we talk about these performative gestures, don't really change anything, right? It's a free token gesture. Yeah, we'll take a knee, but we don't really mean it, right? Because once morals and values have a material cost, and you're no longer willing to adhere to those values because they cost you money, then you never believed in them anyway, right? So it's going to be really interesting to know if the United sponsors have clauses in their contract that they can break them in the event of something egregious like this. I'm sure United have thought about this because it's the only thing they would have thought about. How much is this going to cost, right? But what won't be acceptable, Mike, is the TeamViewer, Adidas, and everyone else remain silent on this issue if United saying a racist. And I personally will make sure I go to particular people at those particular sponsors to get a comment, because silence will not do.
Yeah, I think obviously if it didn't come out all yesterday about all these comments and stuff, and I didn't know about them until yesterday, to be completely honest. I knew about the stuff at the Euros and stuff, and well, I didn't want an Artificial in the first place.
Sure.
I was semi-interested years ago when Mourinho wanted him, but that was prior to knowing everything, obviously. But there is no way in hell they can get someone like him now, especially after all the public outcry. They probably would have been fine if no one knew about it, obviously. I mean,
I agree. Oh, yeah, yeah. It's not because they would be turned off at the thought of his racism. They're turned off at the thought of the reaction to his racism. Yeah. It's so... but I think nothing smacks of desperation more than sending a cut-price racist sexist because he could do a job for you. I mean,
it's not even cut price.
Yeah, exactly. 15 million for a 33-year-old Mark Arnautovic. He wasn't worth 13 million, 15 million in his prime. No. He remained 33. Right? I mean, so I mean, is that what we've reached the point? You know, hey, Alex Jones could do a job for us. Let's get him in. I mean, seriously, why not? Yeah. I mean, once you go there, go big or go home. Let's get Alex Jones in. Right? Let's get a bunch of racists in and a bunch of neo-Nazis because they can do a job for us. Well, fuck it, who cares now? You showed your hand.
It's just...
Mike, and in all my years of watching Manchester United, I've never felt more like walking away and doing something else in my life. Honestly. And that's how disillusioned and the apathy that I feel towards the football club, because I've given up hope of expecting any type of decency or competence. And when you emotionally detach yourself from it and you step back and you don't have an incentive to try to defend the indefensible and you look at it for what it is, it's a disgrace. What they have done to that football club, they have done the impossible. They have turned this golden football club, its amazing history, this iconic brand, and made it toxic. They're so bad that their current play overshadows their entire history. So they can't sell it because right now United are looked at as toxic. Their shirt sponsor announcing after 1 year they want out. The previous sponsor, Chevy, sacked the guy that did the deal. Nike walked away because they said they weren't worth the money. Don't tell me when that Adidas contract's up 2014 and 2024-25, they're going to renew at the price they paid in 2014. They won't, which is an illustration of the share price has dropped, the commercial value has dropped, the commercial contracts have dropped, the commercial revenue hasn't grown in 4 years. Ronaldo wants it. You heard Dean Henderson's comments. By the way, Dean Henderson's comments were consistent with the views of a lot of players. Right? This is one of the things that they had against Ralph Rangnick, saying Rangnick's out, going after him in the press, but not telling the whole story about how despicably they've been treated by the club with broken promises. Where's the moral compass?
There isn't one, isn't there? Like, to be completely obvious, just to be obvious about it, there just isn't one. And if they can get away with it, if they can keep stuff hidden, then they're not going to bat an eyelid, are they? It's the same for a lot of other sports teams in the world, regardless of what sport. You'll see it all the time that if they can get away with it and if they can keep stuff below wraps, it's just going to keep happening, isn't it? I mean, there's talk of obviously the Arsenal player who, I don't want to say names just in case it's wrong, but if that's true, that's also disgusting and sickening, and it's just happening all the time. It's becoming more and more prevalent, isn't it? I mean, we obviously had the Greenwood situation not even 8 months ago, 7 months ago now. So,
well, yeah. I spoke to a senior United employee yesterday about Arnautovic. I'm not going to tell you what he said to me. I'm going to give them the opportunity to respond to that properly. So it's not fair to communicate private a private message that wasn't intended for public consumption. And I like the individual, and it's not their fault. But it won't be acceptable for United to pretend this didn't happen. They're going to have to confront it and address it. And what I don't like, Mike, you mentioned something there. What is fair to say is that there was an allegation made against a particular Arsenal player. And we should always start with the premise that we believe those who make these allegations, right? Because we have to make sure that they feel that they're going to be believed. Obviously, due process has to happen, but we should always accept these allegations at face value. So it's not enough for people to turn around and say, well, I know Arnautovic might have said this, but it's his word against someone else's. No way. That is not acceptable, right? We know that he's done these things. He got suspended for one of them. He's apologized for one of them. It's followed him throughout his career. So, and by the way, one of them was caught on camera. So there is no plausible deniability there. And United cannot pretend that they weren't okay with this, despite this disgraceful, despicable, I don't want to see a player on Manchester United shirt. So Matt Busby turned out his grave.
It's just horrible, isn't it? I can't really think of what else to say besides,
I know.
It's just disgusting.
Mate, it's the first time I've had a signing at Manchester United where, I've had signings. Remember United signed Michael Owen? Remember when they signed Baby? Going, what the hell? And part of me even laughed at the insanity of it, but this was different.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it all day because it was like, I want to make sure this is not my disappointment at the Brighton result, and I want to make sure that I'm not disappointed just because I don't like the quality of the player. So I sat on it for a while and said, wait, I'm going to let my emotions settle down. And I couldn't shake the feeling of complete disgust and the apathy that now consumes me. I honestly feel like I don't care who they sign anymore. I honestly feel like I don't even care about asking. I don't even care about knowing. I do whatever you want, because the one thing that's blatantly obvious to me is the Emperor has no clothes. Manchester United don't have the resources to buy the players they need to compete at the top. I watched City at the weekend. They were exceptional. And then I watched the subs they made. They're bringing off Rodri and Foden and bringing off Calvin Phillips. And they're like, Jesus Christ. I mean, United had to drop Christian Eriksen deep at the weekend because they didn't have a single player that could pick a ball up from defence and start attacks. That's how bad it is.
I mean, the talk of, 15 million euros for Rabiot and then 15 million euros for bloody Arnautovic. Like, it's upsetting to see us, obviously, off-pitch issues aside that we've obviously been covering. They're just not good players, simply put. And like I said, I was saying to my friends before, that there's so many other players in the world that are not world-class, immense players, but you could probably get for the same price and have been decent. There's a lot of players in Syria. There's a lot of players in all these other leagues. And for United, supposedly, who has such a huge scouting department and supposed to be one of the best at them in the world, supposedly, it's just, outside of the past few days, has this guy played in the Eredivisie or not? Or has this guy played for Erik ten Hag or not this summer? And it's been pathetic, to put it simply. And I hate it, honestly, because I know James has said the same on Twitter. It's just, we've moaned for years about going for the manager options. And obviously it's good to back them to an extent, but we've been moaning for a director of football who can create a long-term investment in players, as we've seen at Liverpool, as we've seen at Man City. Liverpool have bought players regardless of Klopp. Like, they will have asked for him a little bit, but Thiago Alcantara was not a Jurgen Klopp player. Mo Salah obviously wasn't, and they've done incredible there. And I wish we would do similar rather than ask Ten Hag. And then what's the point in spending all our money on our scouting department? It's just really stupid, and I hate it, because you've just seen loads of stuff today where you could ask loads of people just on Twitter, and they might not even be huge football fans, and they could probably pick a few better options than the two names we've had the past few days, like for midfield and forward. It's been sad. So
this is a good point, because I think there's really good arguments for both sides of this, right? I think the other argument is United should trust Ten Hag's judgment on players. They should fill that dressing room with characters that he trusts. and not impose players on them, because every time United have done that, they've done a terrible job of it. They've bought players. Van de Beek wasn't a Solskjaer signing, Ronaldo wasn't a Solskjaer signing, and they were imposed on managers. And in many ways, they never work because you don't trust their judgment. But I also believe that United need to have a structure in place that says you are a coach. You're not in charge of recruitment. We will bring in players that is consistent with your ideology, so that when you go, inevitably, a 3-year cycle, we're not doing revolution every 3 years. We can't afford that. Right? We have to bring in somebody that's also similar to you, that will work with these players that will play a certain way. I understand both sides of the argument completely. And I'm not sure which one is the better one. In a proper functioning football club, I agree with you, Mike, 100%, that recruitment has to be, obviously, you managers consulted heavily on it. They have to work with them. And if they're completely against the player, fine. But most managers are relying on other people to scout players for them, because they just don't have that time. So it's almost always relying on other people's opinions. Yes, they can see certain things about players, but the subtleties, and part of that recruitment has to be about looking at players' character, right? Who am I bringing into my football club, right? And United handled the Mason Greenwood thing exceptionally well, no doubt about that. They done exactly the right thing that they should have done. You can't prevent these things; you can only react to them. You can somewhat prevent them by making sure you don't bring people into your football club that have a predilection to this type of behaviour that's going to repeatedly embarrass the football club. If Marko Arnautovic comes into that football club and does something utterly despicable, some racist gesture, United can't claim, well, we didn't know. This is exactly what you should expect. And you, my friend, are responsible for it because you did it. You brought him in. I want you to think, Mike, if this was in any other, imagine I went for a job at Manchester United, in any other capacity. And they looked into my Facebook records and they found a bunch of neo-Nazi stuff. I would like to believe they wouldn't hire me, because you weren't someone that is part of the environment that we want to create. So why any exceptions?
Yeah, it's just, you just don't know how they're allowing it, really. I can't really put it in the best way. It's just, it's absurd.
Well, I asked, where's the custodians of the football club, of the well-being of the football club? Because it seems to me everyone inside Manchester United works for their own personal agenda. Yeah. And the football club's always the casualty of that. Rabiot's had his worst season in Juventus, worst season in Italy. I was just looking at the stats there, and I wouldn't judge the player solely on stats, but I'm going, I highly doubt that he was heavily scouted this year. I heavily doubt that someone looked at Adrian Rabiot over 38 games or 35 games and goes, that's what we need.
Yeah, it's just going off when we used to look at him when he was at Paris Saint-Germain, because obviously we were linked with him when he was on a free when he left PSG originally, but he chose Juve over us. So it's just sad. I can't think of a better way.
Have you seen the reaction of the Juve fans to this?
Happy.
They can't stop laughing. They're like, it's serious? We were going to pay this guy to leave on a free. And Manchester United have come in after 18 million euro. Have they not got eyes? Is their eyes painted on?
It's just stupid, isn't it? There's so many better players for cheaper, and I know you shouldn't always rely on your academy and stuff like that, but I'd rather just see Garner or Iqbal play more than Adrian Rabiot, because outside of the issues that he's had in dressing rooms before with his mum getting a bit too involved, he'd be on an absurd wage, and he's not that good, and he'd probably demand a lot of game time, and again, he's just not that good.
Well, what I don't understand is, like, you don't hire a chef and then turn around and give him bread and water and say, give me a gourmet meal. You need to give them the right ingredients, if you're going to hire someone like that. So if you're going to hire one of the world's top chefs, you're going to hire Wolfgang Puck. You don't turn around and say, right, here's a bag of sugar, bread, and water. Give me those gourmet meals you were cooking up at the last restaurant. No, man, I need ingredients. You don't get a delicacy out of the oven with these ingredients. Well, that's what I'm giving you. That's what we can afford. Okay, but you're not going to get the same result. You understand that? Yeah. What's the point of hiring Eric Ten Hag? Is it just someone else to take the blame for a while?
I mean, that's the thing, and I've seen it on Twitter and stuff like today, and it's just like you can just picture in a year and a half's time, we'll have a new manager, and he'll be saying, "Oh well, I can't get rid of Adrien Rabiot because he's on 150K a week and no one wants him." Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's just stupid, isn't it? Because I don't know how much he would actually add to the team already. Like, I know everyone is hating Scott McTominay, and he did put in a terrible performance against Brighton, but he's maybe like a couple percentage points better. We're not talking we're going from a average player to a good player. We're going from average to he's a tiny bit better. And it's just not worth it. You'd either play some more of the youth players, which I genuinely am not a fan of doing anyway, like playing a load of them, trying to rely on them, or just for the love of God, use the massive scouting department we've got. There should be, when Ten Hag came in and said he wanted Frankie de Jong, the scouting department should have been, okay, well, if that doesn't happen, we have these 4 other options. What do you think? And it just doesn't happen, does it? I don't know what
we
they
talk
do.
about a scouting department. I'm genuinely asking if they watch football.
I'd love that job. They don't do anything. They get paid.
But do they not watch football? I mean, you need a defensive midfielder that can link. Okay, you can't find one. Marko Arnautovic, David Ornstein says it's been brewing for weeks. So if they wanted a big, tall number 9 target man, why didn't they send Scamacca?
My God, yeah, I have been saying that for ages to my friends, like how much I'd love Scamacca. He looked great as Sassuolo. He was dirt cheap, and yeah.
Well, United weren't willing to pay 35 million for Sesko. So they weren't willing to pay 35 million for Scamacca because they don't have the money. It's the only logical extrapolation, right? Yeah. And it's the kindest one I can give them. Because if I honestly believe that the result of their year work, their expertise, is Adrien fucking Rabiot and Marko Arnautovic, they should be marched out of there today and never allowed back in football again.
Yeah.
Sorry, man, for my language.
No, it's completely fine. It's just, it is a joke. Like, Rabiot wasn't good 3 years ago when we were linked with him. He was seen as this very inconsistent player who had a bit of potential going for him because he's huge and has some good technical ability and defensive attributes, but he's never been able to show them on a day-by-day basis. He's now 27, so he's not really going to progress much more. And Juve don't want him. They want him gone as soon as possible. And why would we want him? Like, I'd understand if Nottingham Forest wanted Rabiot.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, that I get.
Yeah, but not us. Like, even if we bought a random starter for, I don't know, Fiorentina or something for 10 million, I'd much rather have that than bloody Adrien Rabiot.
Rabiot and Arnautovic are Sam Allardyce's January signings to keep you up. That's what they are, right?
Yeah, to be fair, Everton could definitely buy them in January. That's the kind of,
that would be, to me, that would be relative to their ability and to their standing in the game. No football club that's serious about winning. So there's another aspect to this that I wonder. And I look at the Glazers and I'm thinking, again, on logical extrapolation, I look at the financial markets. I look at the fact that the last time United were parsimonious in the market was 2009 when the financial markets collapsed back then. That was the year they sold Ronaldo, really didn't replace him. The Feds have raised the interest rates, which makes it very difficult for United to borrow money again. The only ways they can bring revenue into that football club right now is by selling voting rights shares, which will greatly prohibit their ability to take money out if they do that. So that's a one-time hit. They can't appease the fans with signs. They can't appease the fans with results. It's hard to see what gimmick they can use because the Ten Hag new manager bounce is already over. It's hard to see what gimmick they can use to convince fans that investment is there and the football club is moving in the right direction. I look at all these things, and are we looking at owners that have now made a decision that, you know what, we're going to sell this football club in the next year. We're going to look to get buyers. So we're going to do the bare minimum this summer to make sure the asset doesn't massively depreciate. But we're really not interested in long-term success, because that's what that would say to me. That's what those signings say to me. It's patchwork.
Yeah, I mean, even then, we're talking they're going to hold out for the highest bid, and it's going to be a stupidly high bid because Chelsea went for a load, and we're talking 4 or 5 billion. And then if someone's buying that, you're either going to get a similar American owner who is just looking to maximize their own profits, as we've seen with like Liverpool, for example, with Fenway Sports Group, or you're talking the other side of the moral compass with like Saudis or someone along those lines, and that's just as bad, isn't it?
So, it is, mate. You're right, and I don't want to see it either.
Yeah, we're screwed either way.
Well, the thing is, if United had their debts cleared, United generate plenty of money every year. They don't need a wealthy benefactor. They don't need some guy coming in there spending millions. They generate plenty of money. But when you're trying to service debt, when your new raison d'etre is to enrich the owners, right? It's very hard to pay all those bills and then go out and compete at the top of the market when you're competing with states, when you're competing with multi-billionaires. You could, if you looked at the financial landscape in 2005 when they took over, it was very different. You really only had Chelsea that was new on the horizon with money. But the football world has changed so much since then. I mean, United, they like to say they're the biggest club in the world. Take a look at the real biggest club in the world who just won their 13th European Cup. They went out and spent 100 million within a week on Tchouaméni. They were willing to spend another 150 million on Mbappe. That's what the biggest club in the world does. They're European champions. They're league champions. And Barcelona is really no threat to them domestically for a while. They don't have to do that. Right, but that's the year before they bought Camavinga. When you say that the only true statement today is other clubs can do things in the market we can only dream of. Right, the biggest club in the world is a marketing slogan. It's not real, right? And Manchester United speak like the biggest club in the world, but operate like a team that's trying to stay up.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it's sad to see all these other teams doing what they're doing. Obviously, Real Madrid, as you said, they got Tchouaméni, not completely forgetting that they've already got probably the best midfield three in the world, and they have for the last God knows how many years now, 7, 8 years, and they've just went and bought him. Also, they have Camavinga, and then we're seeing it here as well. Yeah, and Federico Valverde as well. And then, obviously, we've seen City. I know they've got Haaland and they needed a striker, but they've then bought Calvin Phillips, who is a great player, and I'd have loved him at United. But we're talking like that. And then Liverpool have done well with getting, obviously, they've overspent on Nunez, but he's always going to be a decent option for them. And then even Arsenal have done well. And Tottenham. All of them have been. Chelsea's the only question mark, but that's because they've gone through a massive takeover and all that kind of stuff. And then our excuse, we don't have an excuse. We've brought in a new manager who is obviously one of the highest rated ones in Europe. We have money. We've let go of a lot of players on insane wages, so we should have more money. And we've made at least a little bit of money. We sold Pereira for quite a bit for his standard. And then there's talk of other players leaving. So
there's definitely other players leaving. I mean, I think Barry will leave. Brandon Williams probably leave. This is another example of United's ineptitude. If you're going to choose to sell a left back and loan one out, you don't sell Brandon Williams and loan Tellez out. You sell Tellez and loan Brandon Williams out, right? No option to buy. Nothing.
Yeah, I don't get that. He's just going to depreciate in value. Even if he had a great season, is he like 29, Alex Tellez, I think, 29, 30?
20 years.
Something along those lines. He's just obviously going to depreciate in value. I assume they're not paying 100. Actually, I'm not sure if they're paying 100% of his wages, but all he's going to do, and it'll be a year less on his contract, so he'll get even less money. So I don't get that in the slightest. Williams could be decent. He obviously might not be great, but at least loan him. He's going to be a year older and could be worth more. But what we're doing is outside the Pereira deal, it's been stupid, and that's just because Pereira definitely was never good enough for us. But at least we made a bit of money off him. But
same with Dean Henderson. Right.
I hate that about Henderson.
United could have sold Dean Henderson to Chelsea years ago for a lot of money. Turn it down. He's a good Premier League goalkeeper, not a great Premier League goalkeeper. He's a good Premier League goalkeeper for a mid-table club to me. Did someone forget to remind him he's on loan before he made those comments? He wasn't sold. He's got to come back, right? Yeah. And so he made these extremely abrasive comments, which, by the way, is a reflection of how a number of players felt inside the dressing room. And I don't necessarily agree with him, by the way. He played for 3 different managers last season, Solskjaer, Carrick, and Ranić, and none of them played him. So, but I'm sitting there going, what's the reason for United loaning these players out? There has to be a reason why they don't want that money now, but in a year's time. And I don't know whether it's about retaining assets on the books for in the hope that you can increase the sell price. I don't know. I would imagine the person that buys United is a multi-billionaire and really isn't concerned by minor metrics like that. They're not concerned about how many players you have out on loan that they can sell to generate. And if United end up with an owner that does need those things to make the decision as to whether they can buy the football club or not, probably not owner United want. So I'm trying to understand the logic, but it's really, really difficult. Because I used to ask myself, why is Woodward in a job so long? And obviously it's because the Glazers are a massive part of United's recruitment. So they are responsible also for the mess. So they can't just solely blame it on Ed Woodward, because they are obviously a massive part in the decision-making process on who they sign, who gets signed, when they get signed. These are people, remember, that took their own family to court, right? Made sure that his own family didn't get a penny of the family's inheritance, tied it all up in court. These are the people that were sued by trailer park owners for illegally inflating rent for children. Right? I mean, these are the most morally bankrupt human beings who shouldn't expect them to give a fuck about morality, because they've shown us time and time again they don't. These are people that were sued by Harley Davidson for pump and dump on their share prices. These are despicable human beings. Let's have it right. And by the way, when you look at some of their political donations, it's a reflection of that. So that really isn't a surprise to me that they're morally bankrupt. But I'm asking myself, this can be the only logical explanation as to why the people, Woodward and Rich Arnold were the most highly compensated executives in the league, clearly had nothing to do with football success.
It's just pathetic, to put it simply, especially due to the fact that, well, the past couple of years they've been okay with their NFL team, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like, obviously they won the Super Bowl last year, and they just don't care about us really. It's just make a bit of extra money for themselves. Obviously, with the dividend payments, I think they came out like 2 months ago now. But it's just sad, really, and I hate it, because it's now been, well, this will be the 10th year until last time we won a Premier League, because we won it in 12-13, didn't we? So it's not getting any better. It's getting worse and worse.
A football club claims it needs investment, but can score taking dividends out and paying hundreds of millions to the owners. Make up your mind. Okay, if it needs investment, then how can you justify taking money out? Okay, one of two things is true. I'm really dreading the Brentford and Liverpool games. What's your view?
Yeah, the Liverpool game's going to be sad to watch. Even the Brentford one, but the Liverpool, we're just going to get humiliated. It's going to be horrible. Like, I remember this time, well, not this time exactly last year, but under Solskjaer, we got embarrassed by them. It's going to be... I don't even know if you can say this team's better. This team probably isn't even better on paper than it was when Solskjaer had his last few games. It's scary, and in a very bad way.
I think it could get dark very quickly. Especially if do lose the next 2 games. I was looking at the league table yesterday and I was going, what game would I be confident United will win in? I couldn't find a team.
Maybe Nottingham Forest, because they can't use their goalkeeper against us. Yeah.
If they can't use any goalkeeper against us.
But
tell me a team you look at that table and feel like you're confident they would win.
We always do well against Leeds United. Like, that's it. Scott McTominay does well against Leeds. Like, that's probably it.
Leeds have bought a bunch of players, won their first game.
Yeah, they actually look decent. So who knows?
So, but there's the perfect illustration. They look decent. If you're decent, here's the thing: if you're a good team and you're playing against United, if you don't win, that's a bad result. Yeah. You should be looking at United going, easy 3 points. because they're so easy, they're so open.
I mean, we got humiliated by a Brighton team that I'm not even well, they have ball players, but they didn't even play them against us, and they'd lost Kukureya and Basuma, and like I bet the man of the match was Danny bloody Welbeck, who we sold 8 years ago now, 7, 8 years ago. Like, it's sad.
Well, see, here's the thing: Ten Hag comes into Manchester United, and United's history dictates they play a certain way. The problem is you don't have the players that are anywhere near good enough to play that way. So what they find out, just like what Ranić found out and everyone else after a few weeks, is United aren't good enough to play open football, that open pressing game. So they end up playing some negative, like Mourinho did, right? Kept Rashford basically as a right midfielder, made sure his wingers came back really deep, didn't trust the defense, end up doing something where you play percentage football because you have to grind out results because you're not good enough to play a certain way.
Yeah.
And so United without the ball are so easy to cut open.
It's kind of scary because Ten Hag is not. I know he did it a little bit at Utrecht, but that was years ago, and we didn't bring in Ten Hag to play that kind of way. We brought him in to do, the Ajax style and all total football and all that, and that's not happening anytime soon. We should have just got like Antonio Conte or something like that.
Yeah, Conte would have walked in the first 3 months. Conte would have walked in the first 3 months with that board, true. And they were petrified of a Conte because he would come out and tell the truth. Erik Ten Hag is a brave man, sacrificing his reputation for these people. I certainly wouldn't. And we now know the emperor has no clothes. We now know we waited, we've seen, and now we've seen that. What a disgrace. All right, mate. I've wanted to do this for a long time. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. I wish you all the best and good luck with the podcast. Don't forget, follow Utd Muppiteirs and Mike. Always a pleasure. Thanks, mate. Take it easy.
Yeah, you too. Great to be on.
Thanks.